My attention-seeking mother-in-law faked a pregnancy announcement at my baby shower because my party was boring. So I gave her the excitement she wanted. My mother-in-law, Gloria, announced she was pregnant at my baby shower in March. She wasn't pregnant, but she stood up during the gift opening and told everyone she had exciting news to share. She said she and her new boyfriend, Carl, were expecting, and wasn't it wonderful that cousins would be born so close together? I was 7 months pregnant with my first child, and this shower had been planned for months. My sister spent weeks organizing everything, and my friends had traveled from different states to be there. Gloria knew all of this, but she still made her announcement right when I was opening the handmade blanket my grandmother had knitted. Everyone turned to stare at Gloria because she was 53 years old. She started laughing and said modern medicine makes everything possible now, and she felt so blessed to experience motherhood again. My husband Luke looked confused and asked his mother what she was talking about. Gloria said she was 8 weeks along and had just found out yesterday, but she couldn't wait to share with everyone at this special family gathering. Carl stood next to her grinning like an idiot while she rubbed her completely flat stomach. My friend Jess asked if this was real because Gloria was past menopause. Gloria got defensive and said age is just a number and miracles happen every day. She then spent the next hour telling everyone about her pregnancy symptoms and how she needed to sit down because of morning sickness. She took my special chair that my sister had decorated and started accepting congratulations from confused guests. People didn't know what to do because it was supposed to be my shower, but Gloria kept redirecting every conversation to her pregnancy. She told my aunt that her baby would be so much more special because it was unexpected and miraculous. She told my coworkers that she'd probably need a bigger shower than mine since this was such a medical marvel. She even asked my mother if she could have some of the decorations to use for her own shower next month. By the time everyone left, nobody remembered to take pictures with me or play the games my sister had planned. Gloria had turned my baby shower into her announcement party, and she seemed thrilled about it. That night, Luke confronted his mother about the pregnancy because something felt wrong. Gloria laughed and said of course she wasn't really pregnant, but she needed to make the shower more interesting because it was getting boring. She said everyone already knew I was having a baby, so what was the point of a whole party about it? She said she just wanted to add some excitement and couldn't understand why we were upset. Luke told her she had ruined my shower and she said I was being selfish because a little attention on her shouldn't matter if I really cared about family. This wasn't the first time Gloria had done something like this either. She wore a white dress to our wedding and told everyone it was because she felt like a bride again watching her baby get married. She announced her divorce during our engagement party and spent the whole night crying about being alone. She pretended to faint during my graduation dinner and made everyone rush her to the hospital where she was miraculously fine. Every milestone in our lives became about Gloria and her need for attention. I decided this fake pregnancy was the last straw, though. If Gloria wanted to be pregnant so badly, I would make sure everyone treated her exactly like she was pregnant. I started by calling all the relatives who had been at the shower and telling them how excited Gloria was about her pregnancy. I said she really needed support because being pregnant at her age was dangerous, and everyone should check on her constantly. Within days, Gloria was getting calls every hour from concerned family members asking about her prenatal vitamins and doctor appointments. Her sister Rose started showing up daily with pregnancy books and articles about geriatric pregnancy risks. Rose would sit with Gloria for hours reading statistics about complications and insisting she needed bed rest. Gloria tried to tell Rose she was fine, but Rose said you can't be too careful at your age. I signed Gloria up for a senior pregnancy support group that met 3 times a week at the community center. The coordinator called Gloria personally to welcome her and said they were so inspired by her courage to have a baby at her advanced age. Gloria tried to decline, but the coordinator had already told the whole group about her, and they started calling to share their own struggles with late-in-life pregnancies. Luke's Aunt Martha became Gloria's self-appointed pregnancy guardian and started driving her to imaginary prenatal appointments. Martha would show up at Gloria's house at 7 in the morning, insisting they couldn't be late for her checkup. Gloria would say she didn't have an appointment, but Martha would say pregnancy brain makes you forget things and drag her to the clinic anyway. At the clinic, Gloria had to admit she wasn't really pregnant, which made her look crazy to the staff. This happened 4 times before Gloria broke down and told Martha the truth. The family group chat exploded. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I sat on the couch watching message after message pop up in the family group chat. Martha had told everyone about Gloria's lie. The messages came so fast I couldn't read them all. Luke sat next to me with his phone in his hand. His face looked serious and tired. He scrolled through the messages without saying anything. I could see him reading about his mother's fake pregnancy and how she'd admitted the truth at the clinic. His jaw was tight. Rose sent a long message about feeling betrayed. She wrote about all the hours she'd spent researching pregnancy risks for women over 50. She'd rearranged her whole schedule to visit Gloria every day. She'd bought books and printed articles. She'd worried constantly about her sister's health. Now she knew it was all fake. Rose said she felt like an idiot for believing Gloria. She said she felt used and manipulated. Other family members started responding. Luke's aunt said she couldn't believe Gloria would lie about something so serious. His cousin said this explained why Gloria had seemed so uncomfortable when people asked about doctor appointments. Someone else said they'd suspected something was wrong but didn't want to say anything. The messages kept coming. My phone buzzed again and again. I felt satisfied watching it all unfold. Gloria was finally getting caught, but I also felt nervous. This was bigger than I'd planned. The whole family knew now. There was no taking it back. Luke's phone rang. He looked at the screen and showed it to me. Gloria. He answered and put it on speaker. Gloria was crying so hard I could barely understand her words. She begged Luke to make me tell everyone this was a misunderstanding. She said I'd taken her joke too far. Luke held the phone between us so we could both hear. Gloria kept crying and talking fast. She said she'd only played along with my crazy revenge plan to humor me. She claimed she never thought I'd actually turn the whole family against her. Her voice got higher and more desperate. She said everyone was being so mean to her and she didn't deserve this. Luke waited until she stopped talking. Then he said calmly that she'd created this situation herself. He reminded her that she'd lied at my baby shower. He said she'd doubled down on the lie instead of admitting the truth right away. Gloria started crying harder. She said she was just trying to make things fun. Luke said making things fun didn't mean ruining someone else's special day. Gloria hung up. My phone buzzed with a private message. Carl Swift, Luke's uncle, had sent me a direct message instead of posting in the group chat. He said Gloria needed to apologize to me publicly. He said she'd ruined my baby shower and wasted everyone's time with her fake pregnancy drama. He said the whole family deserved an apology for being manipulated. I showed the message to Luke. Before I could respond, other relatives started sending similar messages. Luke's aunt said Gloria owed me a public apology. His cousin agreed. Someone else said Gloria needed to take responsibility for her attention-seeking behavior. Then another message came through. This one mentioned Sinead Ward, Gloria's coworker. Apparently the news had spread beyond the family. Sinead had heard about the fake pregnancy through someone in the family network. The message said Gloria had been getting sympathy at work for her difficult pregnancy. Now she looked dishonest to her coworkers too. The consequences were spreading further than I'd imagined. Gloria's lie was affecting her professional life now. I felt a small twist in my stomach. Guilt, maybe. I watched more messages come in about Gloria. People were really angry with her. This had gone beyond what I'd originally planned. But then I remembered her laughing. I remembered her saying my shower was boring. I remembered her rubbing her flat stomach and accepting congratulations while I sat there ignored. I remembered her asking my mother for my decorations. The guilt faded. Luke squeezed my hand. He said his mother had been pulling stunts like this his whole life. He said maybe public embarrassment was the only thing that would actually make her think twice next time. He looked tired but determined. We talked about whether we should defend her or try to calm things down. Luke said no. He said she needed to face the natural consequences of her choices. I agreed. We weren't going to minimize what happened. We weren't going to make excuses for her. Gloria had created this mess herself. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Rosanna Donovan. She was a family friend who'd sided with Gloria after the baby shower. She'd told me I was being too sensitive. Now she was sending me a private apology. She said she didn't realize Gloria had completely made up the pregnancy. She said she understood now why I was so upset. Rosanna wrote that Gloria had a pattern of making everything about herself. She said she'd overlooked it because Gloria always seemed so fun and spontaneous, but now she saw it differently. The message made something click in my mind. Other people were finally seeing what I'd been dealing with for years. They were finally understanding that Gloria's behavior wasn't just quirky or fun. It was selfish and hurtful. They were seeing the pattern. I wasn't the only one anymore who recognized what Gloria did at every family event. Other people were opening their eyes. The family group chat got another message from Gloria. She posted something vague about how hurtful it was when people didn't understand her sense of humor. She said she'd always been a jokester who liked to keep things lively. She was trying to make herself the victim. I waited to see if anyone would support her. The chat stayed quiet. Nobody responded with sympathy. Then Carl Swift replied. He said lying about being pregnant at someone else's baby shower wasn't humor. He said it was cruel attention-seeking. His message was direct and harsh. Still, nobody defended Gloria. The silence was louder than any angry message could have been. Even the family members who usually enabled Gloria's behavior weren't excusing this. She'd crossed a line that even her defenders wouldn't overlook. My sister called. I answered and she asked how I was doing. She said she'd seen the family group chat. She admitted she felt relieved that Gloria was finally facing consequences. She said the baby shower disaster had really hurt her too. She'd spent weeks planning everything. She'd organized games and decorations and coordinated with all my friends. Then Gloria had taken over the whole event. My sister said watching Gloria hijack the party she'd worked so hard on made her furious. But she hadn't known how to confront a mother-in-law on my behalf. She'd felt helpless. I thanked her for everything she'd done. I told her how much I appreciated all her planning work. I promised her that my next baby milestone event would actually be about celebrating. There wouldn't be any Gloria drama. My sister laughed and said she'd hold me to that promise. Luke got a message from his cousin. She was asking if Gloria had always been this dramatic. She said she was remembering incidents from childhood where Gloria made scenes at family events. She started sharing specific stories in the group chat. Other relatives joined in. Someone mentioned Gloria crying through an entire wedding reception because she'd just broken up with a boyfriend. Someone else remembered Gloria announcing her engagement at her sister's graduation party. Another person brought up the time Gloria faked a medical emergency during a family reunion. The stories kept coming. Everyone had a memory of Gloria disrupting something important. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Multiple family members were realizing they'd all experienced versions of Gloria's sabotage behavior over the years. It wasn't just me and Luke. It was everyone. Gloria had been doing this to the whole family for decades. Luke's phone buzzed with a message from Carl, Gloria's boyfriend. The message was awkward and apologetic. Carl said he didn't know Gloria was going to fake a pregnancy announcement. He said he'd just gone along with it in the moment because she seemed excited. He admitted he was reconsidering the relationship. He said Gloria's behavior had been increasingly erratic and attention-seeking. He said it made him uncomfortable. Luke showed me the message. He typed back a polite response. He didn't try to defend his mother. He didn't try to save her relationship. He just thanked Carl for being honest. I could tell Luke felt sad about it, but also unsurprised. Gloria was losing her boyfriend because of her own choices. My phone rang. Gloria. I didn't answer. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, my phone showed I had a new voicemail message. I played it on speaker so Luke could hear. Gloria's voice came through rambling and angry. She said I'd always been jealous of her vivacious personality. She said I'd turned Luke against her. She called me vindictive. She said I couldn't take a joke. She claimed she was just trying to bond with me by sharing in my pregnancy journey. The voicemail was completely delusional. She still didn't understand what she'd done wrong. She still thought she was the victim. She still blamed me for everything. Luke shook his head while listening. When the message ended, I saved it. I wanted to keep it as evidence of Gloria's complete inability to accept responsibility. Luke said we should save all her messages. He said they showed exactly who his mother was. Rose's message appeared in the family chat within an hour. She wrote that she was done enabling Gloria's behavior and wouldn't attend any family events where Gloria played the victim about the situation. She said she'd spent weeks worrying about a pregnancy that never existed and felt manipulated and exhausted. Several other relatives quickly agreed in the thread. Luke's cousin said Gloria needed to make genuine amends before anyone should move past this incident. My aunt posted that she was tired of Gloria's constant drama at every family gathering. Carl Swift wrote that Gloria had a pattern of making everything about herself, and this fake pregnancy was just the latest example. The unified family response kept growing as more relatives added their support. I watched my phone light up with notification after notification. Each message was more serious than I expected. People weren't just annoyed, they were genuinely hurt and angry. I started to feel a knot form in my stomach as I read through the comments. Maybe the consequences were becoming too severe. Maybe I'd pushed this too far. Luke sat next to me on the couch reading the same messages. I could see his jaw tighten as he scrolled through the chat. His whole family was turning against his mother in a very public way. I put my hand on his arm and asked if we should try to calm things down. I said that despite everything, I didn't want Gloria completely cut off from family events forever. Luke looked at me with tired eyes. He said his mother had spent decades manipulating family dynamics, and one incident of real accountability wasn't going to destroy her. He said she needed to learn that actions have consequences. He pointed out that Gloria had sabotaged my wedding, my graduation, our engagement party, and now my baby shower without ever facing real consequences before. We talked for almost an hour about whether to intervene. Luke said the family was finally seeing the pattern that he'd grown up with his whole life. He said if we defended her now, we'd just be enabling her behavior like everyone always had. We agreed to let the family process their feelings naturally, without stepping in on Gloria's behalf. The decision felt right, but also scary. I kept checking my phone to see if the chat had calmed down, but new messages kept appearing throughout the evening. The next morning, Rose called Luke directly instead of messaging in the group chat. He put the call on speaker so I could hear. Rose's voice sounded exhausted and sad. She said she'd been thinking all night about Gloria's behavior over the years. She mentioned the time Gloria faked a medical emergency during their father's funeral, because she felt like people weren't paying enough attention to her grief. She brought up Gloria announcing her divorce at Rose's daughter's college graduation party, and spending the whole event crying about being alone. Rose said she could see now how Gloria's constant drama and crisis-making had exhausted the whole family for decades. She said this fake pregnancy was just the most obvious example of a lifelong pattern that everyone had been too polite or too tired to confront. Rose told Luke she loved her sister, but needed real distance from the emotional manipulation and chaos. She said she couldn't keep dropping everything to manage Gloria's invented crises. Luke thanked Rose for being honest and said he understood completely. After the call ended, he sat quietly for a few minutes. I could tell he was processing years of memories through this new lens. He said it was weird to realize that his whole childhood had been shaped by his mother's need for attention, and nobody had ever called it out directly. My phone buzzed with a text message later that afternoon. It was from my grandmother. She wrote that she was sorry Gloria had ruined the moment when I opened her handmade blanket at the shower. She said she'd been so excited to see my reaction to the gift she'd spent months making. She wrote that she was knitting another blanket now, so we could have a proper photo together when the baby arrived. The message made tears well up in my eyes immediately. I hadn't even realized how much that stolen moment had hurt until my grandmother mentioned it. Gloria's fake announcement had taken away genuine moments with people who loved me, moments that couldn't be recreated or fixed. I texted my grandmother back right away, thanking her and promising to cherish both blankets. I told her how much her thoughtfulness meant to me, and how excited I was to take photos together with the new baby. Luke read the exchange over my shoulder and squeezed my hand. He said his mother had no idea what she'd actually taken from me that day. It wasn't just attention or spotlight, it was real connections and memories with people who mattered. The family group chat went quiet for the next few days. Nobody posted anything except basic logistical messages about upcoming events. The silence felt heavy and strange after all the drama. I used the break to focus on preparing for the baby's arrival in 2 months. Luke helped me set up the nursery on Saturday afternoon. We assembled the crib and organized tiny clothes in the dresser drawers. While we worked, we talked seriously about what boundaries we needed to establish with Gloria going forward. Luke said he wanted our baby to have a relationship with her grandmother, but only if Gloria could behave appropriately. We agreed that Gloria would have limited supervised visits with our baby at first. We decided she wouldn't be invited to any milestone events like birthdays or holidays until she proved she could attend without making everything about herself. Luke said the rules felt harsh but necessary. I said they were protecting our child from the same pattern of manipulation that had affected his whole life. We wrote down the boundaries in our phones so we'd remember them clearly when the time came to communicate them to Gloria. Gloria's text to Luke came on Tuesday morning. She wrote that she'd been punished enough and expected us to tell the family to forgive her now so things could go back to normal. Luke showed me the message and asked how I wanted him to respond. I told him to be direct and honest. He typed back that she hadn't actually apologized to me yet, and until she took genuine responsibility, there was nothing to forgive. Gloria's response came within minutes. She wrote that she shouldn't have to apologize for trying to make my boring shower more fun. She said everyone was overreacting to a harmless joke. Luke read the message out loud and shook his head. He said the response showed she still didn't understand what she'd done wrong. Her complete lack of self-awareness was almost impressive in how total it was. I felt my last bit of guilt about the revenge campaign disappear. Gloria had been given multiple chances to take responsibility, and she was still defending her behavior as justified. I spent that evening drafting a message to Gloria on my laptop. I wanted to lay out exactly why her fake pregnancy announcement had been hurtful in clear terms she couldn't misinterpret. I wrote that it hijacked my celebration that my sister had spent weeks planning. I explained that it disrespected all the guests who came to support me, including friends who traveled from different states. I detailed how it continued her pattern of sabotaging my important moments going back to our wedding. I wrote that her behavior had damaged our relationship, and any future contact would depend on her ability to respect boundaries and stop making everything about herself. Luke read the draft and added his own paragraph about his disappointment in her behavior. He wrote about growing up watching her create drama at every family event and how exhausting it had been. We read the message together 3 times to make sure it was clear and direct without being cruel. Then Luke hit send before either of us could second-guess it. Gloria's response arrived 2 hours later. She wrote that she was sorry I felt hurt by her attempt to share in my joy. She said she still thought I was overreacting to a harmless joke that was meant to bond us together. She claimed she was the real victim because the whole family had turned against her over a misunderstanding. She said she'd always tried to be a fun and spontaneous person, and nobody appreciated her anymore. The non-apology was exactly what I expected, but still disappointing to see in writing. Luke read it and said the response confirmed his mother wasn't capable of genuine accountability right now. We agreed to maintain our boundaries regardless of her victim story. Luke texted back a short message saying we'd revisit contact after the baby was born if she demonstrated real change in her behavior. He said until then, we needed space from her drama. Gloria didn't respond to that message at all. Martha's private message to me came the next day. She wrote that she was apologizing for forcing Gloria to those clinic appointments without realizing I was behind the whole campaign. She said she felt foolish when she learned the truth, but she was actually impressed by my creative revenge. She wrote that Gloria deserved the embarrassment, and she was glad someone finally held her accountable for her attention-seeking behavior. Martha said she'd watched Gloria manipulate family dynamics for years, and nobody had ever pushed back effectively before. I thanked Martha for her understanding in my response. I admitted I felt some guilt about the deception, but maintained it was proportional to Gloria's actions. I wrote that Gloria had sabotaged multiple important moments in my life without consequences, and the fake pregnancy support was just giving her what she claimed to want. Martha replied that she completely agreed and wished she'd thought of it herself. My friend Jess called me Friday afternoon. She said she'd heard through the family network what happened with Gloria's fake pregnancy and the revenge campaign. She said she was glad I stood up for myself after what Gloria did at the shower. Jess mentioned that all my friends had felt uncomfortable watching Gloria hijack my celebration. She said it was so obviously inappropriate and attention-seeking that everyone noticed. Jess told me she'd wanted to say something at the shower but didn't know how to confront someone else's mother-in-law at a party. Hearing that my friends had noticed and been bothered by Gloria's actions made me feel validated. I wasn't being too sensitive or overreacting like Gloria claimed. Other people had seen exactly what I saw and been disturbed by it. Jess said she hoped Gloria learned something from the consequences she faced. We talked for another 20 minutes about baby preparations, and she promised to visit after the birth. When I hung up, I felt lighter than I had in days. The guilt about my revenge campaign had been slowly fading as more people confirmed that Gloria's behavior was genuinely harmful and needed to be addressed. Carl's dinner invitation arrived in our mailbox 3 days later. The card was addressed to Luke and me specifically, with a handwritten note saying he was hosting a family gathering Saturday evening and hoped we could make it. Gloria's name wasn't mentioned anywhere on the invitation. Luke called his uncle to confirm we'd be there, and Carl said quietly that he thought it was time the family showed us some real support after everything Gloria had put us through. He said he'd invited everyone except Gloria because she needed to understand that her behavior had actual consequences. The deliberate exclusion felt harsh at first, but I reminded myself that Gloria had hijacked my baby shower without any consideration for how it would affect me. Saturday evening, we drove to Carl's house and found most of Luke's extended family already gathered in the backyard. Martha came up to us immediately and hugged me, saying she was so glad we came and that everyone wanted us to know they supported our boundaries with Gloria. Rose pulled Luke aside and told him she was proud of how he'd stood up to his mother, instead of making excuses for her like he used to do. Luke's cousin mentioned that Gloria had called her crying about being excluded, but she told Gloria firmly that she brought this on herself. Throughout dinner, different relatives approached us to say they understood why we needed distance from Gloria, and they'd respect whatever boundaries we set going forward. Carl made a point of toasting to new beginnings and healthy family relationships, which felt like a public statement about Gloria's absence. Nobody seemed uncomfortable that she wasn't there, which showed how exhausting her drama had become for everyone. Luke squeezed my hand under the table, and I could see relief on his face that his family wasn't pressuring us to forgive his mother. After dinner, Martha sat with me on the porch and said she'd been thinking about all the times Gloria had disrupted family events over the years. She mentioned Luke's graduation party where Gloria announced her divorce and his sister's wedding where Gloria wore white and cried through the ceremony. Martha said everyone had always just accepted Gloria's behavior as her personality, but watching what she did at my baby shower made Martha realize they'd all been enabling her for decades. She said the family needed to stop treating Gloria's attention-seeking as harmless quirks and start holding her accountable like they would any other adult. Rose joined us and agreed that Gloria had gotten away with too much for too long because people didn't want to cause family conflict. She said the fake pregnancy incident was actually a blessing in disguise because it was so extreme that nobody could defend it or minimize it anymore. Luke came out to check on me, and his aunt told him he'd done the right thing by supporting his wife over his mother. She said too many men let their mothers manipulate their marriages, but Luke had shown real maturity by recognizing the pattern and breaking it. We stayed at Carl's house until almost midnight, and by the time we left, I felt genuinely supported by Luke's family in a way I hadn't expected. The unified message that Gloria's behavior was unacceptable made me feel less guilty about the consequences she was facing. On the drive home, Luke said he'd been worried his family would pressure him to reconcile with his mother, but instead they'd validated everything we'd been saying about her need for attention. He said it felt good to have his family finally see what he'd dealt with his whole life. Gloria posted on social media Sunday morning. Her status update said something vague about how painful it is when family excludes you from gatherings, and how some people refuse to forgive honest mistakes. She didn't mention the baby shower specifically, but it was obvious she was talking about being left out of Carl's dinner. Several of her friends commented with sympathetic messages about family drama and forgiveness, clearly not knowing the full story. Luke read the post and got angry that his mother was trying to manipulate public opinion by playing the victim. He told me he was going to comment publicly with the truth because he was tired of Gloria controlling the narrative through selective information. I watched him type out a brief factual summary explaining that Gloria had faked a pregnancy announcement at my baby shower to make the event more interesting, then admitted it was a joke. When confronted and was now facing consequences for deliberately hijacking a celebration that had been planned for months. He wrote that the family exclusion she was upset about was a natural result of her pattern of making other people's important moments about herself. He kept the tone calm and factual without being cruel, just laying out what actually happened. Luke posted the comment, and within minutes, Gloria's friends started responding. Several people expressed surprise and said they hadn't known the full context of the situation. One friend wrote that she'd always thought Gloria was fun and spontaneous, but this behavior crossed a line. Another commented that faking a pregnancy announcement at someone else's baby shower was incredibly inappropriate, and she understood why the family was upset. Gloria's coworker Sinead commented saying she was disappointed to learn the truth because Gloria had been getting sympathy at work for her difficult pregnancy. The public exposure of Gloria's behavior clearly damaged her victim narrative because she couldn't control what information people had anymore. Gloria deleted Luke's comment an hour later, but several people had already screenshot it and the damage was done. Her friends had seen the truth and their sympathetic responses disappeared. She tried posting another vague status about people attacking her online, but nobody engaged with it the way they had with her first post. Luke said his mother was probably furious that he'd exposed her publicly, but he didn't regret it because she needed to stop manipulating people through selective truth-telling. The family group chat exploded Monday afternoon with a screenshot of a text message. Gloria had posted Carl's breakup text in the chat, clearly trying to gain sympathy by showing how much she was suffering from everyone's overreaction to her baby shower joke. The text from Carl was short and said he needed to end their relationship because he'd realized they wanted different things, and her recent behavior had made him uncomfortable. Gloria's message above the screenshot said this was what happened when family turned against you over a harmless prank, and she hoped everyone was happy that they'd destroyed her relationship. I stared at my phone, waiting to see how the family would respond. Nobody sent sympathetic messages or tried to comfort Gloria. The chat stayed silent for almost 20 minutes, which felt like an eternity in a group that usually responded to everything immediately. Then Rose typed a message saying Carl probably realized that Gloria's attention-seeking behavior would only get worse over time, and he didn't want to deal with the drama. She wrote that Gloria needed to stop blaming other people for the consequences of her own choices. Carl agreed and said Gloria's relationship problems had nothing to do with the family holding her accountable for ruining my baby shower. Martha pointed out that Carl had been there when Gloria made the fake pregnancy announcement and had gone along with it, so he'd seen firsthand how Gloria operated. The unified family response clearly wasn't what Gloria had expected when she shared the breakup text. She'd thought people would feel sorry for her and blame us for pushing her boyfriend away, but instead they pointed out that Carl had made his own choice based on Gloria's behavior. An hour later, Gloria's message with the screenshot disappeared from the chat. She'd deleted it, probably realizing it had backfired and made her look worse instead of gaining sympathy. Luke said his mother kept trying different tactics to make herself the victim, but the family wasn't buying it anymore. Rose sent me a private message saying she knew the breakup text sharing was manipulation, and she was glad nobody had fallen for it. She said Gloria would keep trying to find ways to make people feel sorry for her, but the family was finally seeing through her tactics. I felt bad that Gloria's relationship had ended, but I also recognized that Carl breaking up with her wasn't my fault, or the family's fault. He'd made his own decision based on what he'd observed about Gloria's personality and behavior patterns. My prenatal checkup was scheduled for Tuesday morning. I sat in the waiting room filling out the routine questionnaire about stress levels and emotional well-being. When the doctor called me back and asked how I was managing stress during the pregnancy, I hesitated for a moment before deciding to tell her the whole story. I explained about Gloria's fake pregnancy announcement at my baby shower, her pattern of sabotaging family milestones, and my revenge campaign of treating her fake pregnancy as real until she had to admit the truth to medical staff and family members. The doctor listened to the entire story without interrupting, and when I finished, she started laughing. She said it sounded like I'd handled the situation creatively, and that establishing boundaries with difficult in-laws before the baby arrived was actually excellent preparation for parenthood. She told me that many new parents struggle with family members who overstep or try to take control, and learning to set firm limits early would serve me well. The validation from a medical professional made me feel significantly better about my choices. I'd been carrying some guilt about the revenge campaign and whether I'd gone too far, but hearing a doctor say it was creative boundary setting reframed the whole situation in my mind. She asked if Gloria was still causing stress, and I explained about the family dinner exclusion and the public social media confrontation. The doctor nodded and said it sounded like natural consequences were teaching Gloria that her behavior wouldn't be tolerated, which was healthier than everyone just accepting her drama. She checked my blood pressure and said my stress levels seemed manageable despite the family situation. She reminded me that protecting my peace during pregnancy was important for both me and the baby, and that sometimes that meant limiting contact with people who created chaos. The appointment made me feel more confident that Luke and I were handling things appropriately. Having an outside professional perspective validated that we weren't being cruel or overreacting. We were just setting necessary boundaries with someone who'd proven she couldn't respect other people's important moments. Gloria's email to Luke arrived Wednesday evening. He opened it on his laptop and started reading, then called me over to look at it together. The email was pages long, detailing every time Gloria had helped Luke financially or emotionally over the years. She brought up paying for part of his college tuition when his father wouldn't contribute. She mentioned being there for him during his difficult breakup in his 20s when he'd called her crying multiple times. She listed times she'd given him money for car repairs or helped him move apartments. The email argued that all these past good actions proved she deserved unconditional support from him, regardless of her current behavior. She wrote that he was being ungrateful and disloyal by not defending her to the family after everything she'd done for him throughout his life. She said a real son would stand by his mother even when she made mistakes, and his choice to support me over her showed he'd forgotten where he came from. The email made Luke visibly sad as he read through the list of times his mother had genuinely been there for him. I could see him processing the complicated reality that someone could be both helpful in the past and harmful in the present. He sat quietly for several minutes after finishing the email, and I didn't push him to respond immediately. Finally, he said his mother's past good actions didn't erase her current bad behavior or obligate him to accept being treated poorly. He said he was grateful for the times she'd helped him, but that didn't mean he had to enable her attention-seeking and let her sabotage important moments in our lives. Luke typed a response acknowledging the financial and emotional support Gloria had provided over the years. He thanked her genuinely for those times and said he hadn't forgotten them, but then he wrote that past. Kindness didn't give her permission to hijack my baby shower or continue her pattern of making everything about herself. He explained that real relationships require ongoing respect and consideration, not just past good deeds that excuse future bad behavior. He said he loved her, but he wouldn't sacrifice his marriage or his future child's peace to enable her need for constant attention. Luke sent the email and closed his laptop with a heavy sigh. He told me it was hard to separate his mother's genuine good qualities from her toxic patterns, but he knew maintaining boundaries was the right choice even when it felt sad. A few days after the family chat explosion, my mother called while I was folding baby clothes in the nursery. She asked how I was feeling and whether the stress from Gloria's drama was affecting my pregnancy. I told her I was managing okay, but definitely felt better now that family members understood what Gloria had done. My mother paused and said she'd run into Gloria at the grocery store that morning. Gloria had been standing in the produce section looking at avocados when my mother walked past, and Gloria immediately started complaining about being shut out of my pregnancy. She told my mother that I was being unfair by excluding her from doctor appointments and baby preparations. My mother said she stopped Gloria right there and told her bluntly that she excluded herself through her inappropriate behavior at the shower. Gloria tried to argue that it was just a joke, but my mother said lying about being pregnant at someone else's baby shower wasn't humor. It was cruel attention-seeking. She told Gloria that if she wanted to be part of my life, and the baby's life, she needed to take responsibility for her actions instead of playing victim. Gloria apparently got defensive and said everyone was ganging up on her, but my mother just walked away without engaging further. Hearing that my own mother was willing to be direct with Gloria when Luke and I weren't around made me feel supported and validated. I thanked her for standing up for me and told her it meant a lot that she saw through Gloria's victim act. The weeks passed and my belly grew larger and more uncomfortable. I was now 8 months pregnant and starting to feel anxious about labor and delivery. Every night I lay awake thinking about contractions and pushing and all the things that could go wrong. One evening, while Luke and I were eating dinner on the couch, I brought up something that had been bothering me. I told him I didn't want Gloria at the hospital when the baby was born. Luke put down his fork and looked at me seriously. He said he completely agreed and had been thinking the same thing. We talked about how Gloria would probably try to make the birth about herself somehow, either by fainting or crying or demanding to be in the delivery room. The thought of dealing with her drama while I was in labor made my stomach hurt. Luke suggested we tell the hospital staff that only approved visitors were allowed and we'd give them a specific list of names. Gloria wouldn't be on that list. We also decided we'd wait several days after coming home before even telling Gloria the baby had arrived. That way we could have peaceful time to bond as a new family without her showing up and creating chaos. Luke promised to handle any angry calls or messages from his mother when she found out she'd been excluded. The plan made me feel more secure about having a peaceful birth experience. I could focus on bringing my baby into the world without worrying about Gloria's need for attention. 2 days later, a card arrived in the mail with Gloria's handwriting on the envelope. I opened it carefully, expecting another guilt trip or manipulation attempt. Inside was a short note written on floral stationery. Gloria said she was sorry for any hurt feelings from the baby shower incident, and she hoped we could move forward as a family. She wrote that she understood we were upset, but she missed us and wanted to be part of the baby's life. The apology was still vague and didn't take real responsibility for what she'd actually done wrong. She said hurt feelings instead of acknowledging that she'd hijacked my celebration and lied to everyone, but it was the closest Gloria had come to admitting any wrongdoing at all. Luke read the card when he got home from work, and we sat at the kitchen table discussing whether this was enough to ease our boundaries slightly. I pointed out that Gloria still hadn't specifically said what she did wrong or why it was hurtful. Luke agreed but said his mother had never been good at genuine apologies, and this was probably as close as she'd get. We decided we'd allow supervised visits after the baby was born, but maintain all our other limits. Gloria wouldn't be at the hospital, wouldn't be told immediately when the baby arrived, and wouldn't have unsupervised access. If she could prove through consistent, respectful behavior that she'd actually changed, we might relax boundaries later. A few days after receiving Gloria's card, Rose called Luke with surprising news. She said Gloria had been attending therapy sessions for the past 2 weeks. Luke put the phone on speaker so I could hear. Rose explained that after the family fallout and everyone turning against her, Gloria had apparently reached out to a therapist. This shocked us both because Gloria had always dismissed therapy as unnecessary and said only weak people needed to talk to strangers about their problems. Rose wasn't sure if Gloria was genuinely working on herself or just going through the motions to manipulate the family into forgiving her. She said Gloria mentioned the therapy in passing, but didn't share any details about what she was discussing in sessions. Luke asked if Rose thought his mother was being sincere. We thanked Rose for letting us know and hung up. Luke and I looked at each other across the living room. I said I wanted to believe Gloria was serious about changing, but her track record made me skeptical. Just because someone goes to therapy doesn't mean they're doing the work or being honest with the therapist. We agreed to maintain our boundaries regardless of Gloria's therapy attendance. My sister came over the following weekend to help me organize baby supplies. We spent the afternoon sorting tiny clothes and assembling a changing table. While we worked, I brought up my concerns about handling Gloria at future family events once some time had passed. My sister stopped folding onesies and gave me her full attention. She said she'd been thinking about the same thing because she wanted to host a first birthday party for the baby next year. We talked through different scenarios and agreed that Gloria could attend family events, but with clear expectations that she wouldn't be the center of attention. My sister said she was willing to help enforce boundaries at events she hosted. She suggested having a plan in place where if Gloria started creating drama or making things about herself, someone would quietly ask her to leave. We practiced responses to potential Gloria situations. If she tried to make an announcement, someone would interrupt and redirect. If she started crying for attention, we'd acknowledge her briefly then. Move on. If she wore something inappropriate or tried to upstage the guest of honor, we'd address it directly and privately. Having these conversations with my sister made me feel supported and prepared. I wasn't alone in managing Gloria's behavior anymore. Luke's cousin called him a few weeks later with news that she'd gotten engaged. She was excited about planning a wedding for next year, but had a concern she wanted to discuss privately. Luke took the call in our bedroom and came out 20 minutes later. He told me his cousin had asked if having Gloria at the wedding would cause problems. She'd heard through the family network about the baby shower incident and Gloria's fake pregnancy announcement. Luke said he'd been honest with his cousin about the situation. He explained that Gloria would probably behave better now after facing consequences from the family, but he recommended having a plan for removing her if she tried to make a scene. His cousin appreciated the honesty and said she'd seat Gloria far from the wedding party and away from the microphone. She also asked if Luke and I would be willing to run interference if Gloria started acting up. Luke told her we'd help however we could. After he hung up, I felt sad that Gloria's behavior had become something the whole family had to plan around. Her need for attention affected not just us, but everyone who wanted to celebrate important moments without drama. 3 weeks before my due date, I woke up at 2 a.m, with sharp pains in my lower back. I lay there for a few minutes hoping it was just normal pregnancy discomfort, but then I felt a contraction that took my breath away. I shook Luke awake and told him I thought I was in labor. He jumped out of bed and started grabbing the hospital bag we'd packed weeks earlier. The contractions were coming every 7 minutes as we drove through empty streets to the hospital. Luke kept asking if I was okay and I kept breathing through the pain. We were both relieved that Gloria didn't know this was happening because we hadn't been updating her on my pregnancy progress. At the hospital, the nurses got me settled in a delivery room and confirmed I was definitely in labor. The next 12 hours were intense but manageable. Luke held my hand and helped me breathe through contractions. My sister arrived around noon and stayed in the waiting room. The pain got worse as labor progressed, but I focused on the fact that soon I'd meet my daughter. Finally, at 2 p.m, after pushing for 40 minutes, we welcomed a healthy baby girl. She came out crying and the nurses placed her on my chest. Luke was crying too, and so was I. We spent the first day in the hospital in a peaceful bubble with just our immediate family visiting. My parents came and my sister held the baby while I rested. It was exactly the drama-free experience I'd wanted. No Gloria demanding attention or making the moment about herself. Just quiet joy and love surrounding our new daughter. We named our daughter Kendall Rose. Kendall after my sister who'd supported me through the whole Gloria situation and planned my original baby shower. Rose after Luke's aunt who'd unknowingly helped with my revenge by obsessively monitoring Gloria's fake pregnancy. When we eventually told Gloria the baby's name, we knew she'd be hurt that we didn't include a reference to her. But that was a natural consequence of damaging our relationship during my pregnancy. Luke held Kendall in the hospital room on our second day there and looked down at her tiny face. He said he was determined to protect her from his mother's attention-seeking behavior and drama. He didn't want Kendall growing up thinking it was normal for someone to hijack every special moment. I agreed and said we'd teach Kendall healthy boundaries from the start. She'd see us maintaining limits with Gloria and learn that it's okay to protect yourself from people who don't respect you. We waited 3 full days after coming home from the hospital before telling Gloria that Kendall had been born. Luke and I discussed the wording of the text message carefully. We wanted to be factual without being cruel. Finally, Luke sent a brief message with a single photo and basic information. Kendall Rose was born on this date at this time, weighing this much, and both mother and baby were healthy. Within 2 minutes, Gloria called. Luke answered and put it on speaker. Gloria was crying and asking why she hadn't been told. Immediately. She said she'd missed the birth of her granddaughter and couldn't believe we'd excluded her from such an important moment. Luke stayed calm and explained that we needed peaceful time to bond as a new family. Gloria said that was selfish and she had a right to know when her grandchild was born. Luke told her firmly that we made the choice that was best for our family and she needed to respect it. He said she could meet Kendall next week during a supervised 1-hour visit at our house. Gloria started to argue, but Luke said those were the terms and hung up. I felt guilty for about 30 seconds. Then Kendall made a small noise and I remembered why we'd made this choice. The following week, Gloria showed up for the scheduled visit carrying an enormous teddy bear that was nearly as big as she was. She also had 2 shopping bags full of baby outfits in various sizes. Luke opened the door and Gloria came in quietly, which surprised me. She set down the gifts and asked if she could hold Kendall. I was sitting on the couch with the baby and nodded. Gloria washed her hands in the kitchen sink first, then came over and carefully took Kendall from my arms. She sat in the armchair and looked down at her granddaughter with tears in her eyes. For the entire hour, Gloria was on her best behavior. She spoke quietly and asked permission before doing anything. She wanted to take a photo and asked if that was okay first. She wondered if she could give Kendall a bottle and waited for me to prepare it and hand it to her. I watched carefully for any signs of attention-seeking behavior or drama, but Gloria seemed genuinely focused on the baby rather than making the moment about herself. When the hour was up, she handed Kendall back without complaint and thanked us for letting her visit. After she left, Luke and I looked at each other. It was a small positive sign, but I remained cautious. One good visit didn't erase years of pattern behavior. After Gloria left, Luke and I sat on the couch with Kendall sleeping between us. He stared at his hands for a long moment before speaking. We both knew Gloria's good behavior during the visit was encouraging, but we'd seen her perform before. She'd been perfect at family events in the past, only to create drama the next week when she wasn't getting enough attention. I told Luke we needed to set clear rules now while Gloria was still trying to earn her way back. He agreed and pulled out his phone to start drafting a text message. We spent 20 minutes discussing what boundaries mattered most to us. The social media rule was my top priority because I didn't want Gloria posting photos of Kendall and getting attention from her friends before we'd even shared the news with ours. Luke added the milestone announcement rule because he remembered how Gloria had stolen our engagement news by announcing her divorce the same day. We typed out the message carefully, making each rule specific so Gloria couldn't claim she misunderstood later. Luke sent it, and we watched the 3 dots appear almost immediately as Gloria started typing her response. Her message came through saying she understood and would respect our wishes. But the wording felt off to me. She wrote that she'd follow our preferences even though she thought we were being overly protective and she deserved to share her granddaughter with her friends. Luke read it and sighed. His mother couldn't just agree to something without adding a complaint or making herself the victim. I saved the text message in a folder on my phone where I'd been keeping evidence of Gloria's behavior. If she violated these boundaries later, I wanted proof that she'd agreed to them. 3 days later, Rose knocked on our door carrying a casserole dish and a bouquet of flowers. She hugged me carefully and asked to see Kendall. I brought her inside and Rose washed her hands before taking the baby from me. She sat in the rocking chair and looked down at Kendall with tears in her eyes. Rose apologized for not visiting sooner, but said she'd needed time to process everything that happened with Gloria's fake pregnancy. She started talking about her sister, and I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. Rose told us that Gloria had been going to therapy twice a week since the family group chat explosion. The therapist was helping Gloria understand why she constantly needed to be the center of attention at other people's events. Rose said Gloria had talked in her last session about the baby shower and how she'd felt invisible watching everyone focus on me. The therapist apparently asked Gloria why she felt entitled to attention at someone else's celebration, and Gloria didn't have a good answer. Rose seemed hopeful that therapy was making Gloria think about her behavior patterns for the first time. She mentioned that the therapist was working with Gloria on understanding that her need for attention had damaged her relationships with family members over many years. Luke asked if his mother was actually taking therapy seriously, or just going through the motions to look good. Rose admitted she wasn't sure yet. Gloria would come home from sessions and talk about what she'd learned, but then she'd add comments about how the therapist didn't fully understand her situation. Rose said real change takes time, and we shouldn't expect Gloria to transform overnight just because she's sitting in a therapist's office once or twice a week. I appreciated Rose's honesty about her sister's progress. She wasn't making excuses for Gloria or trying to convince us to forgive her immediately. Rose stayed for an hour and played with Kendall while telling us stories about raising her own kids. Before she left, she told us privately that she thought the consequences Gloria faced were necessary and long overdue. My sister called 2 weeks later and asked if she could host a small gathering to introduce Kendall to extended family members who hadn't met her yet. I felt nervous about Gloria attending, but my sister promised she'd handle any drama that came up. The party was on a Saturday afternoon at my sister's house. Luke and I arrived early to help set up, and I held Kendall while my sister arranged food on the dining room table. Relatives started showing up around 2 o'clock. My aunt and uncle came first, followed by Luke's cousins and their kids. Gloria arrived exactly on time wearing a plain blue dress and carrying a small gift bag. She walked in quietly and congratulated my sister on the nice setup. I watched Gloria carefully as more people arrived and gathered around to see Kendall. She stood near the back of the group instead of pushing her way to the front like she normally would. When someone asked her a question about being a grandmother, Gloria gave a short answer and then redirected the conversation back to Kendall instead of talking about herself. My aunt commented that Kendall had my eyes, and Gloria agreed instead of claiming Kendall looked like her side of the family. The whole afternoon, Gloria stayed relatively quiet. She helped clear plates when people finished eating. She held Kendall for a few minutes when I offered, but handed her back without complaint when Kendall started fussing. Several relatives pulled me aside throughout the party to say they'd noticed Gloria seemed different. My uncle said she appeared more subdued and thoughtful than he'd ever seen her. Luke's cousin mentioned that Gloria had actually listened, when people talked instead of waiting for her turn to speak. I noticed Gloria looking sad a few times when groups of people were laughing and talking without including her. She'd glance over at the conversations with a longing expression on her face, but she didn't create drama or make a scene to force people to pay attention to her. When the party ended, Gloria thanked my sister for hosting and left without trying to extend the visit or make plans for the next time she could see Kendall. A week after the party, Gloria sent Luke a text asking if she could babysit Kendall once a week. Luke showed me the message, and we both felt uncertain about how to respond. We went into our bedroom and closed the door so we could discuss it privately. I told Luke I wasn't ready for unsupervised visits yet, despite Gloria's improved behavior. He agreed immediately and said he felt the same way. Gloria had only been acting appropriately for a few weeks, and years of bad behavior couldn't be erased that quickly. We needed to see consistent, respectful behavior over a longer period before we'd feel comfortable leaving Kendall alone with her. Luke texted back declining the request and explaining we weren't ready for unsupervised visits. He hit send and we waited to see how Gloria would respond. Her reply came through 5 minutes later. She said she understood and asked what she needed to do to rebuild our trust. I stared at the message in surprise. Gloria had accepted the boundary without arguing, or making herself the victim. Luke looked equally shocked. He typed out a response saying that consistent, respectful behavior over time was the only path forward. Gloria replied with a simple okay and didn't push back or demand a specific timeline. Luke and I looked at each other. This was the first time his mother had accepted a boundary without trying to negotiate or guilt trip us into changing our minds. I didn't know if it would last, but it was definitely progress. Kendall turned 2 months old and I went back to work part-time. My boss had agreed to let me work 3 days a week from home and 2 days in the office. On my first day back in the office, several coworkers stopped by my desk to welcome me back and ask about the baby. Bonnie from accounting came over during lunch break and sat down across from me. She'd been at my baby shower and witnessed Gloria's fake pregnancy announcement. Bonnie asked how things were going with my mother-in-law since she remembered how upset I'd been that day. I gave her a quick summary of everything that happened after the shower. I explained how I'd mobilized the family to treat Gloria's fake pregnancy as real, and how Gloria eventually had to admit the truth at the clinic. Bonnie's eyes got wide and she started laughing. She said she wished she'd been there to see Gloria's face when Martha dragged her to those appointments. I told her about the family group chat explosion and how Gloria was now facing consequences and going to therapy. Bonnie nodded and said she was impressed I'd stood up for myself. She mentioned that most people just tolerate difficult in-laws because they don't want to cause family drama. I admitted that causing drama had been scary at first, but seeing Gloria actually change her behavior made it worth it. Bonnie asked if I thought Gloria's improvement would last. I said I was cautiously optimistic, but still maintaining firm boundaries just in case. We talked for a few more minutes before Bonnie had to get back to her desk. The conversation made me feel validated in how I'd handled everything. Even people outside the family could see that Gloria's behavior at the shower had been completely inappropriate. 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived in our mailbox addressed to both Luke and me. I recognized Gloria's handwriting on the front. Luke opened it and pulled out a 3-page letter written on Gloria's personal stationery. We sat down together to read it. The letter started with an apology for ruining my baby shower. Gloria wrote that she'd been selfish and attention-seeking, and she understood now that her fake pregnancy announcement had stolen a special moment from me. She took specific responsibility for making my pregnancy about herself instead of supporting me. The second page talked about her pattern of sabotaging family milestones over the years. She mentioned wearing white to our wedding and announcing her divorce at our engagement party. Gloria wrote that she'd always told herself these things were harmless jokes or coincidences, but therapy was helping her see the truth. She acknowledged that her need for attention had hurt people she loved. The third page explained that she was working with her therapist to understand why she behaved this way. Gloria wrote that she'd grown up feeling invisible in her own family, and had learned to create drama to get noticed. She said that wasn't an excuse for her behavior, but it helped explain the pattern. The letter ended with Gloria saying she wanted to rebuild our relationship and be a good grandmother to Kendall. She promised to respect our boundaries and prove through her actions that she was changing. I finished reading and looked at Luke. The letter felt different from Gloria's previous non-apologies. She'd taken specific responsibility instead of using vague language about hurt feelings. She'd acknowledged a pattern instead of treating the baby shower as an isolated incident. Luke said the letter represented real progress. I agreed, but added that we still needed to see consistent behavior over time. Words on paper were easy. Following through with actual change was much harder. Over the next month, Luke and I decided to cautiously increase Gloria's involvement with Kendall. We invited her to come with us to Kendall's 4-month pediatrician appointment. Gloria arrived at our house 15 minutes early and waited patiently until we were ready to leave. At the clinic, she sat quietly in their waiting room and didn't try to take over or act like she was Kendall's mother. When the nurse called us back, Gloria asked if we wanted her to wait outside. I told her she could come in and she stood near the door while the doctor examined Kendall. The doctor asked me questions about Kendall's eating and sleeping schedule, and Gloria didn't interrupt to add her own opinions or stories about when Luke was a baby. After the appointment, Gloria asked if she could buy us lunch. We went to a diner near the clinic and Gloria was helpful without being pushy. She offered to hold Kendall while Luke and I ate, but she handed her back immediately when I reached for her. The whole outing felt surprisingly normal and stress-free. The following week, we invited Gloria to come with us to a baby music class at the community center. Again, Gloria was supportive without trying to make herself the focus. She sat next to us during the class and sang along with the songs, but she didn't try to show off or demand attention from the instructor. After class, other parents came up to talk about their babies, and Gloria participated in conversations without dominating them. She asked us permission before doing anything with Kendall, instead of assuming she had unlimited grandmother rights. Luke commented on the drive home that his mother seemed genuinely different. I agreed but said we needed to keep watching for signs that she might slip back into old patterns. When Kendall turned 4 months old, we started planning her baptism. Luke and I discussed whether to have an honest conversation with Gloria about our expectations for her behavior at the ceremony. We decided that being direct was better than hoping she'd figure it out on her own. Luke called his mother and asked her to come over one evening. Gloria arrived looking nervous, probably worried we were going to tell her she couldn't attend. We sat down in the living room and Luke explained that Kendall's baptism was scheduled for next month. Gloria's face lit up and she started to speak, but Luke held up his hand. He told her we wanted her there, but we needed to be clear about our expectations. I took over and explained that this was an important religious ceremony for our family, and we needed Gloria to behave appropriately. I said that meant no announcements, no drama, and no attempts to make herself the center of attention. Gloria nodded and said she understood. Luke added that if she tried to create a scene or redirect focus to herself, she'd be asked to leave immediately. He said that would also result in losing access to Kendall for an extended period, possibly months. Gloria's expression became serious. She promised to respect our boundaries and said she understood this was her chance to prove she'd changed. I wanted to believe her, but I'd heard Gloria make promises before. Luke seemed to read my mind because he added that we were trusting her with this opportunity, and breaking that trust would have serious consequences. Gloria said she wouldn't let us down. The baptism took place on a Sunday morning at our church. My family arrived first and filled the pews on the left side. Luke's family came in next and sat on the right. Gloria walked in with Rose and took a seat near the back instead of pushing her way to the front row. She wore a conservative navy dress and minimal jewelry. The ceremony began with the priest welcoming everyone and explaining the significance of baptism. Luke and I stood at the front holding Kendall while the priest performed the ritual. I glanced back at Gloria during the ceremony and saw tears running down her face. She was watching Kendall with a soft expression, but she wasn't making a scene or trying to get anyone's attention. After the priest poured water over Kendall's head and said the blessing, Gloria wiped her eyes quietly. The ceremony ended and we moved to the church hall for a small reception. My sister had decorated tables with flowers and set out food. Guests came up to congratulate us and take photos with Kendall. Gloria stayed in the background during the photo session. When people asked if she wanted to be in pictures, she checked with me first before agreeing. At one point, Kendall started crying and I was busy talking to the priest. Gloria picked her up and soothed her, then handed her back to me as soon as I was free. She didn't use the moment to show off her grandmother skills or demand recognition. Multiple family members commented too. Me throughout the reception that Gloria seemed genuinely different. Rose pulled me aside and said the consequences Gloria faced after the baby shower were necessary for her to take her behavior seriously. She said watching Gloria lose relationships and face public embarrassment had been painful, but it was the only thing that could have broken through her sister's denial about how her actions affected others. 6 months after Kendall was born, Luke's cousin got married. The whole family received invitations to the ceremony and reception. I felt anxious about how Gloria would behave at such a major family event. Weddings had always been triggers for her attention-seeking behavior. Luke reminded me that Gloria had been respectful at Kendall's baptism and at every other family gathering for months now. We decided to trust that the pattern would continue. The wedding was on a Saturday afternoon at a hotel downtown. Luke and I arrived early with Kendall and found our assigned seats. Gloria came in wearing an appropriate burgundy dress that complemented the wedding colors without standing out. She sat at a table with Rose and some other relatives. The ceremony began and Gloria sat quietly watching. When the bride walked down the aisle, Gloria didn't make comments or try to compare the wedding to her own. After the ceremony ended, everyone moved to the reception hall. Gloria congratulated the bride and groom warmly but briefly, then moved aside to let other guests talk to them. During dinner, I watched Gloria at her table. She was showing people photos of Kendall on her phone, but she wasn't dominating the conversation or demanding attention. When someone asked her a question, she answered and then asked them questions back. At one point, the bride's mother came over to our table and asked to hold Kendall. Gloria was nearby and offered to take photos of the bride's mother with the baby. She helped without trying to insert herself into the moment or make it about her. The reception continued with dancing and toasts. Gloria participated in conversations but stayed in the background. She didn't try to give an unsolicited speech or create any dramatic moments. When the evening ended, Gloria said goodbye to us and left without trying to extend her time or make plans. Luke and I drove home feeling relieved. Gloria's improved behavior at such a major family event marked real progress. 3 months after Kendall's birth, Gloria sent a text asking if she could take Kendall for a few hours at her house. Luke and I sat at the kitchen table reading the message together, both of us feeling nervous about the idea of unsupervised time. Gloria had been respectful at every family gathering since the baptism, but leaving Kendall alone with her felt like a big step. We talked through all the possible scenarios that could go wrong and what boundaries we needed to set. Luke called his mother and explained that we'd agree to a trial visit if she followed our instructions. Exactly about feeding times, nap schedules, and safety rules. Gloria agreed immediately and promised to text us updates throughout the visit. The next Saturday morning, we drove Kendall to Gloria's house with a detailed list of instructions and all her supplies. Gloria answered the door dressed casually and welcomed us in without any dramatic performance or excessive emotion. She held Kendall gently and listened carefully as I went through the feeding schedule and nap routine. Luke reminded his mother about the no social media posting rule, and Gloria nodded without arguing. We left feeling anxious but hopeful that Gloria would prove herself capable of respecting our boundaries. Gloria sent photos every hour showing Kendall playing with toys, eating her snacks, and napping peacefully in the portable crib we'd brought. At the agreed pickup time, Gloria had Kendall ready with all her things packed and handed her back without trying to extend the visit or create drama. She told us Kendall had been wonderful, and thanked us for trusting her with this opportunity. The visit had gone exactly as planned without any boundary violations or attention-seeking behavior. Over the following weeks, I noticed something changing in how I felt before seeing Gloria at family events. The constant anxiety that used to sit in my stomach whenever we planned to visit had faded into something more manageable. I could relax during conversations with Gloria instead of staying alert for signs she might create a scene or make everything about herself. She still had moments where I could see the old patterns trying to surface, like when someone complimented Kendall and Gloria opened her mouth as if to redirect the attention to herself. But she'd catch herself mid-breath, close her mouth, and redirect her energy into asking the person questions about their own life instead. The change wasn't perfect, and I knew Gloria still craved attention more than most people, but the effort she put into controlling those impulses felt genuine. She was doing the work to be a better grandmother and family member, even when it clearly took effort. I started to believe that rebuilding trust with Gloria might actually be possible if she continued this pattern of respectful behavior. My sister called one evening with exciting news and asked Luke and me to come to dinner at my parents' house the next day. The whole family gathered around the table, and my sister stood up with a nervous smile to announce she was pregnant with her first child. Everyone erupted in congratulations and excitement, while my stomach immediately tightened with worry about how Gloria would react. I watched Gloria's face carefully for any sign she might try to make this moment about herself or draw comparisons to her fake pregnancy announcement. Gloria stood up and walked over to my sister with her arms open for a hug. She congratulated my sister warmly and told her how thrilled she was to have another grandchild in the family. She asked genuine questions about the due date and how my sister was feeling without trying to share the spotlight or make the conversation about her own experiences. Throughout dinner, Gloria stayed engaged in celebrating my sister's news without once mentioning her fake pregnancy or trying to create drama. She offered to help with anything my sister needed and spoke about supporting her through the pregnancy journey. Watching Gloria behave appropriately at someone else's pregnancy announcement showed me she'd actually learned that supporting others' moments was more valuable than stealing attention for herself. That night, after we got home and put Kendall to bed, Luke came into the bedroom and sat down next to me with a serious expression. He told me he was proud of how we'd handled the whole situation with his mother, because setting firm boundaries and following through with consequences had actually worked. He explained that growing up, he'd watched Gloria manipulate every family situation and create drama at important events, but nobody ever held her accountable for her behavior. Family members would get upset temporarily, but then forgive her and move on without any real consequences. So Gloria never had any reason to change her patterns. Our willingness to enforce serious consequences and maintain boundaries even when it was uncomfortable had given Gloria the wake-up call she needed to finally address her attention-seeking behavior. Luke said he wished someone had done this years ago because maybe his childhood would have been less chaotic if his mother had faced accountability earlier. He squeezed my hand and said he was grateful we'd stood firm together, even when family members questioned whether we were being too harsh. A few weeks later, Gloria called and asked if we could meet for coffee to discuss something. We met at a cafe near our house, and Gloria seemed nervous as she stirred her drink. She told us that my sister had asked her to help plan the baby shower, and she wanted to check with us first about any boundaries she should be aware of. The self-awareness she showed in asking this question before agreeing to help demonstrated real growth from the woman who had faked a pregnancy announcement at my shower without any consideration for how it would affect me. I appreciated that Gloria recognized she needed guidance about staying in a supportive role rather than taking over or making the event about herself. I gave her some clear guidelines about letting my sister make all the final decisions, not offering unsolicited opinions about decorations or themes, and absolutely no surprise announcements of any kind. Gloria listened carefully and took notes on her phone, then thanked me for being direct with her about expectations. She said she understood why I needed to set these boundaries given what had happened at my shower, and she wanted to prove she could be helpful without being destructive. Kendall's first birthday party arrived on a sunny Saturday in September, and we'd invited the whole family to celebrate at our house. I felt nervous about how Gloria would handle such a major milestone event for Kendall, knowing that big family gatherings had historically been triggers for her attention-seeking behavior. Gloria arrived early and immediately asked what she could do to help with setup. She arranged tables and chairs exactly where I directed without trying to rearrange things according to her own vision. During the party, she helped serve food and clean up spills without trying to control the event or make announcements. When it was time for Kendall to eat her smash cake, Gloria took photos and videos from the side without pushing her way to the front or demanding to be in every picture. After Kendall opened presents, Gloria waited for Luke and me to post photos on social media first, before sharing any of her own pictures, respecting our boundary about being the first to share Kendall's milestones publicly. Family members came up to us throughout the party commenting that Gloria had been genuinely helpful and appropriate without any drama. Rose pulled me aside and said she was impressed by how much her sister had changed over the past year. A few days after the party, I asked Gloria if she wanted to come over for coffee while Kendall napped. We sat in my living room, and I told her that I wanted to acknowledge the real progress she'd made in respecting our boundaries and working on her behavior in therapy. I explained that I could see the effort she put into catching herself before falling into old attention-seeking patterns, and I appreciated her commitment to being a better grandmother and family member. Gloria's eyes filled with tears, and she wiped them away quickly. She said facing consequences for the baby shower incident had been one of the most humiliating experiences of her life, having the whole family know she'd lied about being pregnant for attention. But she admitted the humiliation had been necessary because she'd spent decades prioritizing getting attention over maintaining genuine relationships with people she loved. She said losing access to Kendall and facing potential permanent damage to her relationship with Luke had forced her to finally take her issues seriously, in a way nothing else ever had. Gloria thanked us for not giving up on her completely, and for giving her chances to prove she could change her behavior. She said she knew she'd never be perfect, but she was committed to continuing therapy and working on herself. Rose came over one afternoon while Gloria was babysitting Kendall and told us something that surprised us both. She said Gloria had been attending a support group for people with attention-seeking behaviors in addition to her individual therapy sessions. The group met twice a week at the community center, and Gloria had been honest with them about the fake pregnancy incident and how it had damaged her family relationships. Rose had driven Gloria to a few sessions and heard her share openly about her patterns of creating drama and needing to be the center of attention at other people's important moments. Hearing that Gloria was taking her issues seriously enough to seek multiple forms of help beyond just the therapy we'd required made me believe her behavior change might actually be sustainable long-term. She wasn't just performing good behavior to regain access to Kendall, she was doing the genuine internal work necessary for lasting change. Rose said the group had helped Gloria understand that her attention-seeking came from deeper insecurity and fear of being forgotten or overlooked, and she was learning healthier ways to get her emotional needs met. Luke and I lay in bed one night talking about our future and whether we wanted to have more children eventually. We agreed that if Gloria maintained her improved behavior over the next year or two, we'd be willing to include her more fully in a second pregnancy experience. I said I could imagine actually enjoying having Gloria's support during another pregnancy if she continued respecting boundaries and not making everything about herself. Luke acknowledged that the consequences his mother had faced were severe, including public humiliation and temporary loss of family relationships, but they'd been proportional to her pattern of sabotage over the years. We both felt glad we'd stood firm in enforcing those consequences because they'd led to genuine positive change rather than just temporary good behavior. Our relationship with Gloria would probably never be completely carefree or without some level of caution, but it had become manageable and sometimes even pleasant to spend time with her. My sister's baby shower took place on a beautiful spring afternoon at a restaurant with a private event room. The whole family attended, and I watched Gloria carefully throughout the event to see how she'd handle being at someone else's shower after what had happened at mine. Gloria wore a simple dress that complemented the color scheme without standing out, and she helped my sister greet guests as they arrived. During the gift opening, Gloria sat quietly with the other family members and didn't try to make comments or redirect attention to herself. She took photos of my sister opening presents, but didn't post them on social media or try to narrate what was happening. When people asked Gloria about being a grandmother, she answered briefly and then redirected the conversation back to celebrating my sister's pregnancy. Watching Gloria behave appropriately and supportively at someone else's shower after she'd completely hijacked mine with a fake pregnancy announcement felt like real vindication that consequences actually work when they're consistently enforced. After the shower ended, my sister hugged me and thanked me for dealing with Gloria's behavior so firmly over the past year. She said knowing that Gloria had faced real consequences and changed her behavior had made her own pregnancy experience much more peaceful because she didn't have to worry about drama at her important events. First real